Like with the films of De Palma's main influence, Alfred Hitchcock, Blowout is a movie rife with thrilling moments and amazing set pieces. Out of all of his films, this one might be the one most saturated with them, or at least it feels this way, as some of these thriller moments are among the best he's ever shot. De Palma's glossy and polished style works well here with the subject matter, which includes not only the expected level of violence and thrills, but also an element of political intrigue and a commentary on the nature of perception, or the nature that recorded film and audio plays in perception. All of this went over my head the first time I watched Blowout. The movie I compared it to most was Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up, and had only thought of this one as the less artistically pure version of that story, taking the concept from its art house roots and refashioning it for the sake of a more standard thriller. But watching the movie again, I can see that there's far more below the hood than just the thrills that come with good genre filmmaking. Blowout is fundamentally a film about record. It's a film about history and who writes it. It's a film about evidence and who's prepared to let it be known. It's a film about art, including low art's role in contributing to truth. Ironically, it's this idea, the idea that lower, in air quotes, forms of art can contain as much truth as stuff of higher merit. It's this idea which I failed to take heed of when judging the movie for the first time. It's hard to blame me though. Blowout, with all its flash and pizzazz, hides the depth of its themes pretty well. I prefer Carlito's Way in Phantom of the Paradise to this movie, though not by a lot, but I consider this to be De Palma's best De Palma movie. The filmmaking here has a snappiness to it, one which cuts the fat involved. There's significantly less slow motion here, as an example, than there is in Dress to Kill or Carrie. The movie moves quickly, snapping from one moment to the next, and this fits well with its theme of the standard news cycle and pop culture. In Blowout, truth is something which should be available, yet is not. Its potential for being exposed comes from random chance, not necessarily from virtue. Travolta's character doesn't discover the conspiracy, at least not at first, because of any merit of his own. He discovers it because he happens to be at the right place at the right time, and also happens to have the requisite skills necessary, due to his occupation, for untangling this mystery. The location of the assassination works well because of this, as its remote nature, the crowded woods which encircle it, and the quaint creek at its center, happens to be just a random nook in the world. It's not anywhere as flashy as a campaign stage or a street in Dallas during a public event. It's an assassination specifically designed to be without discovery. The fact that anyone was there at all, at least anyone who could recognize what was actually seen and heard, was a miracle. A loose end which needs to be tied into a neat little bow so that the world can continue on as it has been, none the wiser. These shadowy aspects elevate De Palma's form, as the set pieces, rather than just being thrilling for thrilling's sake, which would be more than enough to make this a great movie. These set pieces are now in keeping with the spirit of the movie, that of the intrigue and the line between life and death which govern our political reality. You don't need to be a believer in assassination conspiracy theories to see the parallels this film draws to political history more broadly. The act of politics in of itself is the act of channeling violence into productive ends, and therefore includes the necessity of trying to oppose violence, which serves more nefarious ends. Even just assassinations which have occurred without conspiracies behind them are still in keeping with the theme of political violence in this film. But beyond just the theme of violence, which is one of the most well-worn themes in fiction, it's the theme of the record violence leaves behind which truly elevates the subject matter in my opinion. Again, even sans the conspiracy elements, the assassination is broadcasted to the public through the visuals and sounds of television, and also with still images and words from the newspaper. Violence as a fact of life and history is one of the things we record and then pass out throughout space and time by both distributing this information to others and preserving this information for future generations. The common sentiment then, that it's the winner who writes the history, is as true here as it is in other examples. Travolta here represents that minority voice, that figure who has the potential to expose a hidden truth, one which will not only change his current reality, but will change reality as perceived by future generations. The weight on his shoulders here is so immense that he's willing to risk his life and the life of those he loves for his duty to truth. His actual day job takes a back seat to this duty, and this happens in a way that draws parallels between both, as all his skills and the equipment he'd use for his job, skills which involve manufacturing a reality for the screen, are then repurposed in order to expose a reality. Whenever movies do this, examine the false reality of fictional media, they almost always then examine how this fictional media intersects with reality, or how it even exposed elements of reality which are so deeply baked into it they exist beneath the phenomenal present. The manufactured violence on screen is the very real violence we see in life, but with all its extraneous realities cut loose. Blowout both begins and ends with the murder of a beautiful woman, but in the case of the very real example, the scream being real is more genuine. In other words, the violence we see on screen is a reflection of the violence we experience in life. This is true both with the movie inside the movie and the movie itself, which we, living outside of it, in turn, recognize as a stylized version of our own reality. How much of modern assassination conspiracy theories turn out to be real aside, we all know that conspiracies of this nature could happen. And if they've never happened against politicians, then they have happened towards individuals. There's no way of knowing how many car accidents which have taken a civilian's life were bought and paid for by a jealous husband or irate business partner. We'll never know, as those who get away with it, well, get away with it. Audio and visual media should be the great equalizer here, but it's also another tool which can assist in the con itself. On top of that, sometimes regardless of our best efforts, the truth as we've seen it, the truth as we've recorded and preserved it, can, in the moment of brief distraction, simply be erased. If this is the case, that truths which were once at liberty of being discovered can suddenly cease to exist, what you might expect is that the remnants of those truths, just through the sturdiness of being real, would echo throughout the world around us in glimmering fragments, like broken pieces of glass in the dust, reflecting in sections a truth which was once more fully realizable in its unbroken form, their origins unknown, but the impression they leave on us through their gestalt, profound.
Now that's a scream!